From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning and happy Monday, security gang. I'm out of X jail on my personal X page. So thank you everyone for tuning in there. Packed show for all of y'all today. We're talking about Scattered, Spider, and Aflac continuing to hammer the insurance industry in Israel versus Iran, Russia versus China. Things are escalating in cyber warfare, as well as some 0 days and vulnerabilities y'all need to pay attention to this week. And it's a packed show. If you missed my article over the weekend, the new cyber front, how Israel and Iran cyber warfare is mirroring the Russia-Ukraine playbook. Go give it a read. You'll start to see how Russia really set the stage, and now it's happening there, and a lot happening on that front as well. As over the weekend, President Trump took the liberty as commander-in-chief to drop a whole bunch of MOBs on Iranian's nuclear facilities. We'll talk about the potential cyber implications of that on the show this morning. So let's get going. I've got my double espresso this morning. Coffee cup. Cheers, y'all. It's good. All right. We'll kick off with Aflac saying it stopped an attack launched by a sophisticated cybercrime group. That group is likely the Scattered Spider group, because we know they're the ones targeting the insurance industry. The Georgia-based company published a statement notifying the SEC on Friday that the incident was initially identified on June 12th. The intrusion was stopped within hours, and no business functions were affected by ransomware. Here's the thing about Aflac. Aflac has a really mature security program. I mean, really mature. It's legendary in CISO circles, and I say that personal knowledge. Legendary in circles. Tim Callahan, their CISO, a very, very experienced CISO, a very, very smart security practitioner. It looks like the impacted files may contain information on claims, health information, social security numbers, and other personal data of customers, beneficiaries, employee agents, and other individuals in its U.S. business. The company said it can still underwrite policies, review claims, and otherwise service our customers as usual. So zero business disruption. And in a world of security practitioners, zero business disruption in a cyber event is the goal. If you can continue to operate your business, even though you're going through an incident, you're going through an event, that shows the maturity and effectiveness of your security program. Now, we all know that stealing information is something as simple as identity. And we know Scattered Spider lives off of that. So once they're able to compromise an identity, they do have the tools to move within the network. It appears here, and again, there's not a lot of information, and I haven't spoken to anyone at Aflac to confirm nor tell me if this is true or not. So what I'm saying here is just based on my personal knowledge. It seems like Aflac had the right tool in play, that as the Scattered Spider group started extracting information, it immediately set off alerts. They were able to put a stop to it. They were able to log them out, and they may have only been able to move that data out. And whatever that data is, it came from somewhere like that. So it came having some of that information. How much information there is and all of that, that's still to be told. I'm sure we'll know more about that in the next week or two. And once we do, we'll keep y'all appraised to that situation. But again, they're just showing you the fact that a mature program, and again, these are great cases to show the board. This is a great board slide. Aflac knew Scattered Spider was coming. They had enough tooling in place to recognize that even though they were able to get access into the environment the moment they started extracting data, it set off all the alarms, and they were able to stop it. No business was disrupted because of resiliency. That's a great board slide. And in order for us to achieve the Aflac model, I need to do X, Y, Z. Those are all great little aspects there as well. So good job to the team at Aflac for doing that. So big thing on Friday, and I was going to kind of do an episode on it, like kind of like a short reel on YouTube and Instagram and X. And then I was looking at it and I go, okay, someone's just having a fun day. So news broke out that one of the largest data breaches in history and people were tweeting and posting, and salespeople were like, don't be a victim. And it turns out to be a nothing burger. To be clear, a nothing burger. All it is all the data that's ever kind of been stolen over a period of time. Well, they'll all put in one file. No, yes. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And then you have that. So it's an info stealer. It's kind of like stolen credentials. It's all right, but it's nothing new. It's just there. It's always been there. It's part of the victimhood. It's part of the fact that all your credentials are online, always. And so you want to use a password manager. Those are important. You want to have MFA on your very important accounts, your social media accounts, your banks, your email, right? Your bills, accounts you don't really care about. Maybe you ordered something off an e-commerce, you never saved your credit card. You don't have to worry about MFA there. Your Amazon account, have MFA. Anywhere where you have payment information, you should have MFA. Anywhere where if you were blocked out, it would disrupt your life, have MFA. And please don't use text MFA, use an app MFA. The Google Authenticator app and Microsoft Authenticator app are free to download. You can use those. That's the best way to go about it. We'll get into more news here as American steel giant Nucor is sharing an update on their cyber attack, claiming that attackers have taken some data from their system. The incident occurred in mid-May. We talked about it here on the show nearly a month ago. On Friday, Nucor shared an update on the incident in a filing with the SEC. The company showed the threat actor managed to exfiltrate limited data from the compromised IT system. The company is now reviewing and evaluating that impacted data and will carry out appropriate notifications to potentially affected parties and to the regulatory agencies as required by applicable law. So that will become available as we'll get more information as it becomes available, but it's that there. Okay, so let's get into the geopolitics side of this cyber warfare thing, because tune in, buckle up, here we go. A lot of unexpected twists and turns here. A Russian dairy supply has been disrupted by a cyber attack on their animal certification system. The Mercury platform, which is part of Russia's federal state information system for veterinary surveillance, was taken offline last week due to the attack, the third such incident this year and the most severe to date. The outage did force producers and suppliers to revert to a paper-based veterinary certificates. The shift caused logistical chaos. Several regional distribution centers refused to accept goods, and major retailers like Lenta, Yandex, Lavka, and Muratorg experienced supply chain disruptions. Under Russian law, all businesses handling meat, dairy, eggs, and other animal products must register with Mercury and issue veterinary documents electronically. Without them, processors are legally barred from accepting raw milk. That's a way to keep their food supply safe. No groups claimed responsibility for the attack on there. However, it wouldn't be far-fetched to see this being pinned on the Ukrainians in an effort to publicly pressure Russia. China is targeting Russia despite their alliance? No, hang on. Whoever wrote this, shock that Russia has that China has no alliances but to China, that Russia does not trust China, that China does not trust Russia, and that the idea of getting a ceasefire and allowing Russia into the global economy in a way will further isolate China, which is exactly what you want to do to a malign threat actor like China. So let's get into this. China attackers have been targeting Russia, raising serious concerns as multiple cyber attacks linked to China have been reportedly breached Russian military and defense systems since the Ukraine war began. Despite public declaration of friendships between Moscow and Beijing, analysts now say that the Chinese government has been actively spying on Russian technologies, including nuclear submarines, drone systems, and battlefield tactics. The breach highlights a growing undercurrent of distrust and strategic intelligence gathering, even among so-called allies. The group tied to Beijing, APT-27 and APT-31, are believed to be behind some of these stealthy operations. And why are they targeting that? Well, very simple. According to researchers from Team T5, one group named Scenario impersonated a Russian engineering firm's email to seek data on nuclear submarines. The intention appears to be collecting information about Russia's battlefield operations, modern warfare tactics, and Western weapon technology seen in Ukraine. China's preparing itself for a potential move on Taiwan. And China also sees the eastern part of Russia as potentially being territory they could conquer. And the reason for that is because it's mineral and energy rich, and China needs that, right? And we'll get to Israel, Iran in just a minute because that plays into the Chinese calculations, right? I mean, that does play into the Chinese calculation. And so in regions like Taiwan, where there's geopolitical tension, Russian military, the idea of Western weapons, and again, Ukraine isn't using any new weapons at all, zero weapons, right? New weapons. All Ukraine's using is old weaponry. So they're trying to get information on old weaponry, which again, weird. So there's that there. Over the weekend, and by the way, kind of going back to that whole thing, just to finally like wrap up the China-Russia issue. China will continue to target Russia because it feels like Russia also is isolated. And so the two of them together are kind of isolated together, but it doesn't have the same impact because they're neighbors and they share a very, very large border. And Putin inherently doesn't trust Xi Jinping. Doesn't. So that relationship there does not exist. After the U.S. bombed 3 key nuclear sites in Iran, the backpedaling Tehran regime is vowing to retaliate. So here's what they've done to retaliate thus far. In the morning hours, they shot 30 ballistic missiles out of 50 that they attempted to launch. 20 were the detonators, and the not the detonators, but the trucks they used to launch the missiles were bombed by the Israeli Air Force in the skies at Tehran. So for a lot of the trolls that like to say, "Oh, Iran's kicking Israel," no, not when your fighter jets are 2,000 miles away from home and they're bombing your launchers. That's not the case. And then they launched one missile last night. One ballistic missile, kind of like the Houthi rebels. The Houthi rebels every 3-4 days are like, "Look, we're here, and here's a missile," and it gets shot out in the atmosphere, or intercepted. Either way, there's that. DHS now issuing a national terrorism advisory system bulletin on Sunday, warning that the Iranian government has publicly condemned the U.S. involvement in the conflict, and retaliation could come in several forms. Cyber is the most likely retaliation factor, and like, they're not going to go after critical infrastructure or something to give Trump a reason to hit him back, because Trump will hit them back. My guess is they're going to try to do some kind of flag planning, maybe defacement type of attack, or maybe a basic disruption type of attack. And again, the regime is, over the last 4 or 5 days, internet's been so sparse in Iran because Israel's hammering them on the cyber front that they keep shutting off the internet. Also because a lot of information from Iran is making it out to Israel, and so they don't want that either. And so they've shut off the internet almost entirely, to where it kind of like, if you look at the spikes, it's not there. So Iran, for their end, are vowing retaliation. I'm not saying you should dismiss this, that they're not going to attack. I'm saying just mind the TTPs and IOCs that Iran targets. They typically do target telecom, hospitality. You could see some cyber espionage there. So you just want to be very mindful of it, as well as critical infrastructure, ICS. Iran is known for going after ICS, so you want to be on alert there as well. Israel, for their end, is expanding the battlefield into cyberspace. We now know that over the weekend, I've received several briefings that the Israeli attack on Iranian banks was in the form of MIPR malware, where they were actually deleting. Not only were they disrupting the banks from being able to operate, they were deleting all the data the banks had, meaning customers' balances. We also know internally from someone in Iran who shared yesterday that the IRGC soldiers haven't been paid in 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, they haven't received their salaries. And so as time passes on and they can't pay their soldiers, you could start to see people just lay down saying, "I'm not getting paid. There's no benefit to me. I don't want to die. See ya." And you could see the whole thing crumble there as well. Overnight strikes by the U.S. against the facilities there. Again, we talked a little bit about that, but we're seeing Israel really, really hit a lot of their critical infrastructure. Both Iran and Israel have been at cyber war since October 7th. And so now the battle has moved from the Israeli home front to the Iranian home front. They've taken the war to them, and predatory cyber continues to launch cyber attacks against predatory Sparrow. Claimed credit for the attack on Iran's bank SIPA. That's the wiper malware that they launched there, and then the draining of 90 million from Nobitex, Iran's largest crypto exchange, and then posting the stolen source code list on social media. The Iranian government again continues to shut that down as well. So, and all their proxies are nowhere to be seen. So there's that as well. All right, we'll move from geopolitics to stuff you need to pay attention to on the home front in order to continue to maintain resiliency within your business ecosystem. Teleport warning of a critical severity vulnerability in their open source platform, which could be exploited remotely to bypass standard authentication controls. Teleport provides connectivity, authentication, and access control for servers and cloud application. It supports SSH, RDP, and HTTPS, and it's used with Kubernetes and various databases. CVE 2025-49825 has a CVSS score of 9.8 and can be exploited to circumvent the SSH authentication, allowing attacker to access the teleport managed systems. So you want to make sure you get that patched up. This issue impacts versions 17.5.1 and below, and it was addressed with the release of version 17.5.2 and subsequent new versions there as well. Meta-owned WhatsApp telling Security Week that a recent Freetype vulnerability flagged as potentially exploited at the time of disclosure has been linked to Paragon. Paragon is a spyware firm. CVE 2025-27363 is an out-of-bounds vulnerability in the Freetype open source library that could lead to arbitrary code execution. The advisory did say the vulnerability may have been exploited in the wild. However, there's been no public information on the attacks exploiting it. WhatsApp told Security Week this week that it was requested by its researchers after the flaw was linked to a Paragon exploit. And then Citizens Lab reported in March that the WhatsApp zero-day vulnerability has been exploited by the Paragon spyware attacks. When Citizens Labs focuses on Russia and China, I'll give them any sort of credence. The Department of Justice is moving to seize $225 million in crypto stolen by romance scams run out of Vietnam and the Philippines. The civil forfeiture complaint was filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia this week, where investigators from the FBI and Secret Service said they used blockchain analysis to trace the funds back to the frauds schemes perpetrated by actors in the Philippines. The people behind the scams used hundreds of crypto wallets to execute thousands of transactions in an effort to conceal the source of the funds. Investigator traced the money back to over 400 victims in Texas, Arizona, Virginia, Iowa, California, and other areas. So good guys prevails there. And CrowdStrike taking a breath of fresh air after a federal judge dismissed a lawsuit by airline passengers accusing CrowdStrike of negligence and public nuisance for pushing a faulty software update that disrupted the airline operations in 2024. U.S. District Judge Robert Pittman found the plaintiff's claims against CrowdStrike were preempted by the Airlines Deregulation Act, since the harm was tied to airline services such as ticketing, boarding, and flight scheduling. Pittman determined that the ADA still applied because CrowdStrike's faulty software update directly affected airline services and not the customers themselves. The proposed class action lawsuit had tens of thousands of other travelers that were stranded in airports for hours or days due to that disruption. So CrowdStrike gets a breath of fresh air there. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern live with all the latest cybersecurity news. So go check that out and find our website, cyberhubpodcast.com, where you'll get a summary of the show in written format directly in your inbox each and every single day. Until then, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.